And more hello. Welcome back. I'm covering a lot of hard topics lately. And today's topic is autogynephilia. Uh, I have been accused of being autogynephilic. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to spit all that out more than once. It's been a like go-to take from a lot of gender critical people, primarily. People that think that trans people aren't real. They like to think we're fetishists. Somehow that makes them far more comforted. I'm not sure why. But I figured we actually needed to talk about what it is and why specifically that I say I am definitely not someone that identifies with this term. So, first up, what is it? It's a term coined by a sexologist by the name of Blanchard, and he put it as a male's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought of himself as female, and intending the term to refer to the full gamut of erotically arousing cross-gender behaviors and fantasies. And he stated that he intended the term to subsume transvestism, including for sexual ideas in which feminine clothing plays only a small or no role at all. And yeah, they came up with some other variant terms to describe the same thing. So they went and created this based on some reports of sexual arousal from transsexual women and some cisgendered men at the thought of themselves as a woman in, well, usually sexual situations. That is what is usually brought up. There's nothing specifically that says it is part of some sort of sexual situation within the text that I'm reading to you, but that that is usually how it is brought up. In fact, they lay out 4 different types. Those aroused by the thought of wearing typically feminine clothing, those that are aroused by the act or fantasy of doing something regarded as feminine, the arousal of fantasies of body functions specific to people regarded as female, and then arousal to the fantasy of having a normative woman's body or parts of one. Now, I'm gonna I'm gonna put this very plainly. I don't have any arousal of any sort from doing anything feminine. Uh, a lot of people like to target trans people, specifically trans women, because this primarily is meant to target trans women. Because that is how Blanchard started it out, was as a consideration for trans women. So it tends to be used to target us. But man, I'm gonna have to cut that. Anyways, it tends to be used to target us. And they tend to say things like, "Oh, well, you just like to picture yourself as a woman during sex," because this is all sort of a fetishistic thing as far as this guy's concerned. And that's how most people tend to understand it. And because of that, obviously it has to be about sex. And I'll get into in a sec why there's sort of that misconception. Uh, but that's that's look, I'm gonna be totally honest. I am a woman. Why would I not picture myself as a woman in terms of sex? Do they really think that women don't picture themselves as women in sex? I would think they do. Just gonna lay that out there for you. In fact, I'm pretty sure from talking to a lot of my uh, cis friends that they do in fact tend to think of themselves as women during sex or when they're fantasizing about sex. But it's not being a woman or being feminine that generates any sort of arousal for me. And we're going to get into the details here uh, shortly. Actually, you know what? Let's go into some of those. Uh, I skipped a little bit, but he uh, he wanted to put trans women into two categories: the normal homosexual category, because uh, he considered us men, and therefore liking men would be homosexual. But he saw that as normal for trans women. And yeah, he basically says that that group tends to transition earlier and seek like gender affirming surgery much sooner. Though we're going to get into why that's not necessarily true. But the other group were the ones who don't tend to like specifically prefer men, whether they were bi or uh, lesbian. He didn't care which. He felt that that was all being autogynephilic. Man, I hate that word. But he assumed that we would transition later, often in our 30s or older, and that we were oddities. He also felt that some side information like success with dating factored into this, saying that uh, autogynephilic trans women had better success in dating women and therefore less need to transition. Um, as someone who is not specifically into guys, I can say that had nothing to do with literally anything. I did transition late, but that is mostly because when I originally tried to come out, I was basically shoved back in the box. If you've seen my story of my life, you have heard the story before. so I'm not going to repeat it. But yeah, it stuck me back in the box for like 30 years. It wasn't because I didn't want to come out, it was that I felt I couldn't. And the whole concept of surgery, gender affirming surgery, is fine. I mean, there are, as someone who is not the biggest believer in like going through surgery, I've had surgery before. I don't like to do it unless it's necessary, but I'm I'm totally there for gender affirming surgery. I mean, I would even do it in the right circumstances. And a lot of the reason I haven't had any surgeries is because doing this, I need to make content regularly. I can't take off like a month. That would be very hard just to have some surgery, even if I could afford it, which is also another issue. But none of that factors into his concept here. He refers to us as non classical transsexuals. And he didn't really understand how it relates to gender dysphoria, which is reasonable because there is nothing connecting this to gender dysphoria. I mean, I want to wear women's clothes because they're gender affirming. It gives me euphoria. It has nothing to do with arousal or some sort of weird fetish. In fact, the fact that I didn't have like a strong motivation to like cross dress, which by the way, is something I never did before transitioning. If you even want to call it that. I'm pretty sure once I'm transitioning, you can't call it cross dressing anymore. But I know there are people who would. So use whatever term you feel like. But yeah, that's not a sexual thing for me. Uh, there's no like interest specifically sexually to any of that. I just want to be seen as my gender. I don't think that's too much to ask. It feels really good the times that someone has just assumed I'm a woman and I don't have to say anything and they just get it. Having to actually explain what gender you are to people sucks. It just sucks. I am very good friends with gender dysphoria. But let's get back to the topic. Um, there are definitely some other points that I wanted to talk about. Oh, yes. Also, he felt that uh, autogynephilia was also a sexual orientation. We weren't really bisexual or lesbians. We just were autogynephilic, which, man, sorry. I'm trying really hard not to laugh at this. I'm definitely not like interested specifically in like this as some sort of sexual identity. Because for me, there's literally no relation between femininity and like sexuality. Well, except for one way. And I think we're going to get to that a little bit later. Obviously, they started doing research with cisgender women because his work was entirely with trans women and cis men. And now, I have seen good suggestions that autogynephilia is a thing that some cis men have. They like to picture themselves as like the person that they're having sex with. And I've never felt that. But then again, I am definitely not a cis man. So, yeah. Uh, but they started researching cis women and using a version of the same scale with them. And it was just as common for women to show the same sort of responses as trans women. Which, again, makes sense. We're women. Why would we not see ourselves in, like, sexualized situations? I still don't know where I saw it, but there's a part in here, and I'm going to summarize it because I don't have it in front of me. But they did some tests where women, and that's cis women, uh, were doing regularly normal things and, like, yeah, here it is, actually. Uh, Finding arousal from wearing provocative clothing or imagining that per- potential partners find one attractive. Man, man, I've never felt attractive in my life because I was never myself until fairly recently. So, you know, I've never had that feeling whatsoever. But man, that sounds nice. I mean, I know I know plenty of guys that go, "Oh yeah, women would find me hot in this," which is the same thing being described here. It's just being applied to men and not women. But somehow, if it's a trans woman with that experience, it's somehow a fetish. This is just such junk science. I I don't have better words for it. I mean, trans feminists here started critiquing it, calling it flawed, unscientific, and needlessly stigmatizing. Yeah. And, oh, also promoting the sexual objectification of women. Because, of course, the cis straight man would feel that women are sexual objects. And he's the one that started this whole conversation, working backwards from hand-picked evidence to confirm his bias that he generated a model to describe. Yeah, it's just stupid. I've I've had this specifically used to target me literally hundreds of times, which is why I'm making this video. They love to say that, I'm getting some sort of sexual fulfillment from being a trans woman. Frankly, I wish. there's lots of stigma and doubt and mental chaos that goes with being a trans woman. I would really like to not have any of that. Thanks. I won't get too much into that, but at least some part of me wishes that this could be true, only because it would give me another thing that would confirm, that I relate to, some sort of ideal. But I don't fit any part of this ideal. I tell people when I've been targeted with this before, uh, talking about how it's just a fetish, and I'm like, um, you know, demisexual here. I have no relation to sexual arousal from anything without like an emotional attachment to a person, and that person is not me. I have so many like self-esteem issues with my physical appearance from decades of feeling that my body wasn't me, that the confidence that this suggests is just hilarious. And now, some part of me can look at myself in a mirror and think, I'm not ugly, but especially now, much easier. I mean, I couldn't even look at myself in a mirror for 30 years. So, without like cringing or, looking away, because that person didn't feel like me. I wish I had the sort of confidence that this suggests. Yeah. I've never thought I could just slap on a wig and I'd somehow be sexy and appealing. That's not in any way how that works. All right. And frankly, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But yeah, this is a bunch of junk science. Some people might identify with this. Uh, I have definitely seen some cisgender cross dressers who fulfill this stereotype. I've seen clips from a series called White Lotus that apparently had such a scene in it. And there was a lot of debate whether this person was like a trans person or if, they're one of the like cross-dressing guys who are autogynephilic. And maybe there are guys like that. That is definitely not me, and that's not any of the trans women I know. I've not met one trans woman who somehow finds this whole experience like a sexual thing. Obviously, obviously, anyone who is interested in sex is going to have fantasies of themselves in a sexual situation. And if you are a woman, you will identify as a woman in those fantasies. That does not mean that you're some sort of fetishist. And yeah, I already said I was quitting, so I'll leave that as my final thought. I hope you found that interesting and informative. I did not keep on task terribly well this time because this whole thing just sounds so absurd to me. But hopefully you found something to like in this. If you did, please like and subscribe down below. Also, if you have any commentary or feedback, please put that down below as well. And with that, I think we're out. Have fun, take care, and see you later. Bye.